I'm gonna go over to mine to confirm. Come on. It says we're live. It's like this 10-second delay that's just really weird. So I'm going to assume I'm live. Let's see. So I know that we are, come on now. By the way, okay, so again, it says that we're live, but I'm just trying to get confirmation. So I hate these first like 35 seconds. Okay, yes, so I can see it on my Facebook. We are live. Good deal. All righty, so I want to thank everybody for joining us with Meet the Candidates. I'm super excited. I will give like a brief on me and who and why I decided to host this or asked for the candidates to join us. And it is because I am a parent. I have 6 kids currently in the district, and so everything that goes on in our school district is super important to me. I have one that's on a 504 plan, another one that's in the SPED program, and then 2 in high school, 3 in junior high, and one that just started this year, pre-K 3. And so the things that go on all different levels have always been important to me. And I regularly attend school board meetings myself just to keep up. So I think that is really great with this, with that there were opponents and that were coming in that let's just have a conversation. So I've reached out, received several questions that were submitted. And if you'd like to submit questions for the second one that I'm planning on hosting on the 22nd of April, you can go to the link on each one of like wherever you're seeing this live video, but it's kimkostek.com/index.php/GCCISD. There's a form to submit. So any of the questions that were submitted, I kind of grouped them together and did the best that we could and made sure that we had a variety of different subjects. So so everybody knows the rules that we've already gone over prior to going live. They have 2 minutes to answer each of the questions. And we're going to go and everybody's going to get a chance to go first. I told them that I would have absolutely no problem whatsoever hitting mute if they go over 2 minutes. Sorry, just because we have a lot that I kind of wanted to go through, and time is of the essence, and just didn't want to go down some rabbit holes. So they will answer the question, but they're also, or answer the question directly, and they're also allowed to refuse the answer if they don't want to, and that's okay. So briefly, if everybody could kind of tell us about themselves, I'm going to kind of go from top to bottom here to start out. So from what I'm seeing, so Mr. Minson, you're up first. Just briefly tell us who you are, and don't worry, you don't have to worry about why you're running for school board. That's actually a question. So just who you are, a little bit of background.
Okay, I'm Jeff Minson. My wife and I have been married 38 years. Em and I have 5 children, 4 boys and 1 girl who went through GCCISD. One of them is a special needs, and you may have seen him in Walmart or anywhere because he talks to everyone. He's a redhead named Jared. I worked in the oil industry as I graduated with an accounting degree, but didn't do much accounting. I'm more of a systems data architect, controls person, specializing in building different systems, not computer systems, but business systems. I've been active in the Boy Scouts of America for 20, 30 years. And I enjoy history, family history, and do-it-yourselves. So that's sort of my background, hopefully within 2 minutes.
Awesome. You're good. I'm not stickler yet. In fact, if y'all saw me going messing my phone, that's what I was doing as I was pulling up my timer. Okay, Mr. Poppy, you're next.
All right. Well, good evening. Ben Poppy, representing District 5, seeking re-election. My wife and I, Crystal, have 4 children. They all attend Victoria Walker. And it's kind of that unique year where all 4 of them are at the same school at the same time. And that will never happen again in the next forever, I guess, once my oldest hits junior high next year. So was in the military for a while, worked at Galena Park ISD in the business office, do accounting, do finance, currently a CFO of the school district. And that's me in a nutshell.
Good deal. Sounds good. All right, Mr. Renteria.
Hello, I was born in Baytown, born and raised in Baytown. I'm a product of Baytown. I went to the schools in GCCISD, so did all my family. I graduated from Lee College. I graduated from the University of Houston. I served in the 82nd Airborne Division. I served a mission. I went to BYU. I served on the city council for 14 years. I was active with the Little League and baseball and many other groups in the city of Baytown. But I love education. It's been a part of my life, and that's why I'm here.
All right, good deal. Mr. Laredo.
Hello, everybody. My name is Agustin Loredo. First of all, I want to say thank you so much, Ms. Kostick, for hosting this. But product of Baytown, my family's been here for a very, very long time. Been on the board for a few years. I've been married for 20 years with my wife, Dory. We have, 21 years. We have 4 kids, 2 in college at Lee College, 1 at Baytown Lee, and 1 at Baytown Junior. I've been a teacher for 1 year at Carver. I taught elementary, 5th grade ESL. And then this is my 20th year at South Houston High School. And I'm a soccer coach as well as a teacher there. Before that, I worked for the Boy Scouts when I graduated from U of H. I went and worked as a district executive for the Boy Scouts and helped form troops and work with kids and adults there, training and stuff. Currently, I'm vice president of the Promise Center here in Baytown, the Fred Aguilar Promise Center. I'm a commissioner on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I was on the recharter committee for the city of Baytown last round. I'm a member of the board of directors for the Parks and Recreation, and I'm the president of the Lee College's Hispanic Education Access and Completion Committee, as well as being an advisory board member for the Grad Cafe here in Baytown, and among other things, but those are the things that I do around the city.
All right, good deal. Awesome. Well, I mean, I'm super excited that y'all are all here. And I'm really happy to be able to provide this avenue, to kind of put y'all in front of, the residents of our area and what have you. So, and we have a great group, well-rounded, I believe so, of the candidates that we have to be able to choose from. So, all right. Again, we know the rules, and this is not a debate. This is just, questions and getting to know them. So the very first, so when I kind of chose the order and stuff already, I was like, gosh, I want to make sure that this is fair and I don't get caught in oh, well, this person went first and this person did that. And I don't know. That's just the way that the world is that we live in now. So I started with numbers and districts. Because I figured that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So we're gonna go kind of forward and then backward, and then one of the last questions, it's pretty much whoever wants to answer first, right? I'll just whoever gets it. Okay. It's like the buzzer. I might make y'all hit a buzzer. So I have a rule with most of the things that I do in life. If it ain't fun, I'm not doing it. So people are like, what in the world is this doing? No, I mean, we got to have as much fun of this as possible. And whoever gets elected is stuck with me for 4 years. So if you've already been on the board for the last, then, that's not always pleasant. Okay, so here we go. The first question, this is obviously for all of y'all. What are the top issues or topics that you hope that the school board will take up? You are not limited to picking just one subject, but please explain. And remember, you have 2 minutes. So we're going to start with Mr. Minson because he's District 1.
Okay, so I guess the main area of focus right now is trying to triage what's happened to us with the COVID virus, and the impact to the education system. Right now, it's really damage control, because most of our education systems were highly stressed or broken, not be able to meet face to face. And so that's put stress on the teachers, on the students, and on the families. So getting that sort of lined out back to a new normal, and then we could start taking the next steps. I think that's the first. The second big area for me is definitely special needs. I think that it's very easy in a crisis mode to forget those that are on the fringes. And they're the ones that sometimes need us the most. Having had a son that's had special needs, that's a special place in my heart. And so that's going to be one of the areas that I think we need to focus on to keep in front of our administration, to make sure everybody wins.
Less than 2 minutes. See, y'all can do this. That was great. Okay. That's awesome. Okay, so let's go with you, Mr. Laredo, since you are first up already in your district. Hold on, let me reset, cancel, start. Okay. Do you need me to repeat the question or?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so what are the top issues or topics that you hope the school board will take up? You're not limited to one subject, but just please explain whatever it is.
So there's a few things. I think the answer probably across the board and across the state is going to be dealing with COVID. And I think that one of the biggest issues we're having with COVID is not only getting to some sort of going back to school and normalcy. I really enjoyed Mr. Minson said, he's correct. The other part is closing up that learning gap. I know there's been a few studies that say that the gap is not as wide as people think, because kids are able to retain a lot of information despite what the belief was. There's been some studies that say the contrary, but there is going to be a large need in two areas, I believe. One is with our pre-K education. We have a large amount of kids that have not come to school, especially in our younger grades, our primary grades, pre-K and kindergarten, first grade, because of the fear. I don't blame parents for having that fear. So we're going to have a lot of catch up to do with our little babies that are coming in, especially with our new preschool programs that we're trying to implement for everybody to get educated. And so we have our hands full with that. The other part is there's a large group of kids that have not come to school. And honestly, my heart goes out to these families, because honestly, we live in an area where we have a great need, socioeconomic, and some of our kids are working to help support families. I know that we've gotten a little bit of a stimulus here lately, but honestly, it hasn't been enough to help the families recover from losing jobs, from not being able to go to work. We're currently going through a kind of a difference in the petrochemical industry. There's a lot of questions out there. And so a lot of the kids haven't been able to come, and making sure that those kids have the tools available to graduate, and making sure they have the tools available to go after a post-secondary education, or to go into the military or go into the workforce. Those are responsibilities that I feel that our school district needs to give to them. Their parents pay taxes so that we educate their kids, despite anything that might be going on.
Sorry, that was my mistake, because I got a message that said something about we all nosy, and so I didn't give you your 10-second warning.
I still got a couple of things, but am I good?
Well, I'll give you 10 seconds, because I didn't give you a 10-second warning, because I had a we all nosy alert that came up that we had an issue with the stream, but you're good. Go ahead, 10 seconds.
Okay, well, that and making sure that all our kids have opportunities, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, woo, there you go. You did that in 30 or 3. We're, like I said, I had somebody send me a message that was like, hey, it's not coming on We All Nosy. And I was like, crap, what happened? But I'm sure we're just waiting for that approval. So either way, it'll be shared there. Okay. All right. Mr. Renteria, you are next. So what do you see as what are the top issues or topics that you hope that the school board will take up?
Okay, as always, the students are number one. COVID, hybrid learning, returning back to to face-to-face education. Getting through COVID is a big deal for us that we need to focus on. We need a partnership with the city of Baytown to make sure that we have internet for all of GCCISD. We need quality internet, okay? We've had internet for some people that has been buffering in, buffering out, for my understanding. And, you know, some see the teachers, some don't, some hear the teachers, some don't. So we need to make sure we got good quality internet. We need financial support for virtual schooling for students who need to remain virtual due to state legislation. That's a big deal there. We need to make sure that we have those finances for that. We need to make sure all the students have iPads, all students, good internet and iPads that work so they can get quality education for those that are virtual. Support for teachers, teacher pay, students who have fallen behind because of COVID, the COVID slide. We need to make sure that there's incentives, pay incentive actually for tutors and for teachers. Make sure that they have the need, the money, the finances to help all those people in need. Special needs, the special needs children, don't leave them behind. We need to make sure that our state funding is there because of the lack of attendance in school. We need to talk to our legislators, make sure that we're getting that funding that has dropped down by, I think, 3%. And lastly, but most importantly, is security. We've had 2 lockdowns right now, and we need to make sure that our kids are safe, that our teachers are safe, and that everybody's good. In fact, I have an idea of who we can hire to help
Gonna mute
with
you.
the security issue.
All right. All right. I told y'all I'm ruthless. There's my timer. All right. Awesome. All right, Mr. Poppy, last but not least.
All right, so there's probably a lot of different directions. First and foremost would be with kind of what Mr. Minson talked about was post-COVID. The effect of what COVID did, you know, the education commissioner first stated that it was going to be a COVID cliff, but then they did adjust, like Mr. Laredo said, they called it a COVID slide. So there are fallbacks, especially in math and reading, and like Mr. Laredo talked about, especially in early education. So I think some of the things the board has already been working on is trying to implement the Early Learning Academy. And then school safety is always a staple. It's always a priority. And our bond in 2019, I think we had $3.7 million that were allocated for school safety. So to continue to provide safe and wellness, and with the effect of COVID, there's a lot of, you've talked about it from the very beginning, about a year ago, about the mental health of the students when they come back to school. So we need to be mindful on how the resources and support for the effect of COVID in the students at all ages throughout in all the schools and campuses. And then I would also say with mental health comes in with bullying and making sure that we're being aware of what's going on in the home and then be able to prevent things from happening to where we're ensuring safe, adequate learning environment. And then like Mr. Laredo talked about, there's the impact of, you know, they call it the equity gap or, you know, closing the gap. So we need to look at that and look at, you know, I have a feeling when benchmarks and testing come this spring, the gap has widened is the safe assumption. So to provide and allocate funding for that purpose and for resources to close the gap up. Continued growth and equity. And then obviously funding, we advocated to the state to secure House Bill 3 that was passed 2 years ago for funding going forward.
Oh, like right on time. Good job. Oh, okay. Y'all follow rules well. I have to say that. So y'all did pretty dang good. Okay. All right. Next. So this is, I love this question when it came through and I said, oh my gosh, this is a must. All right. So, would you tell us about a teacher that influenced your life? All right, Mr. Laredo, you're up first.
And I feel like I'm gonna retell a story I've told a lot of teachers already know. the best two people that have influenced my life as teachers has been the first teacher I had at GCCISD and one of the last. One is Mary Ann Belts, my kindergarten teacher. When I was at San Jacinto, she taught me how to read. She taught me my letters. She was patient. She was loving. She was such a wonderful lady that now she still works for the district, I believe, as a sub. And she's a gift of God. Honestly, the woman can do no wrong. Wonderful lady. Taught me the basis of education. One of the last teachers I had, Pat Colley, may she rest in peace. That lady was an inspiration as well. She would bring, you had top marks in her class. She would invite you to her house at the end of the year. Back then it was a little different. We went and she would cook dinner for us. And it wasn't so much the dinner, although I do like to eat. It was the fact that she opened her home to us, and her husband and her were so inviting. And they, honestly, I've been teaching for about 21 years, and those two ladies are part of the reason that I'm in education today. They're an extreme example of what every good teacher should be. In addition to that, there's two teachers, Juanita Boning and Lynn Goodson, who were who have been mentors for me in education. I still work with Juanita, and Lynn was my first department head. Women that cared about kids, honestly, full-heartedly cared about kids, and still do.
Awesome. Good deal. That's why I think I like this question so much. All right. Mr. Renteria, you are up. Hold on a second. I got to reset, cancel. There we go. Go ahead. Tell us about a teacher.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say the greatest teacher of all time was Jesus Christ. And that was my teacher. He taught me how to be humble and how to love everyone. And once you do that, you can teach other people. Now, on the secular level, of course, I had Mr. John Britt from Lee College. I'll never forget him. May he rest in peace. But he was a very good motivator for me and taught me a lot about education and focusing on the things that matter in life. And I'll be forever grateful to Mr. Britt for that. Of course, there's also been a lot of other teachers that have influenced my life. But those are two of the main ones that have affected my life.
I think those are two good choices too. So yes, Mr. Britt was incredibly influential. It hit our community hard when we lost him. So, all righty, Mr. Poppy, you are next.
All right, well, I think, I had a lot of teachers that influenced and affected me. Actually, one wasn't actually a teacher, he was a principal, but I remember in 5th grade, towards the end of it, a principal from another campus came and said, "Hey, I'm going to be the principal of your middle school." So we all assembled in gym. He kind of told us how to be successful in middle school. It was his first year to be a principal at the middle school, the same year I went into 6th grade. And it just happened to be 3 years later when I went to high school, he actually became the principal of the high school. So I had him for the last 7 years, all my secondary years in education. And he had a son that was a year behind me grade wise. And so I got to know him. He took a vested interest, and he would just make comments like, "You can do whatever you want to do in life, continue to learn, education is important." And I kind of took that to heart. So I always try to be a lifelong learner because of that. And I try to give back to the community, to the district, and try to emphasize the importance of education and being a lifelong learner. And then just my basketball coach in high school, it was a class, he wasn't teaching in the classroom, but he was a great motivator, and he led you to believe that you can do whatever you put your mind to. And so that always stuck with me throughout life. So.
Awesome. Mr. Minson, who is the most influential teacher that you've had in your life?
I'm not going to say who's the most influential because, like others, there's, from a spiritual side, there's certain that I would mention, but that's not for here. I think I'm going to mention a unique teacher. Several years ago, I had the opportunity to be invited into a home here in my neighborhood. The man was making an effort. He's a good friend of mine from work, or he's a acquaintance from work. He was out at the storehouse as a supervisor. I was the business services supervisor. And we sort of talked. But this setting, many years after he'd retired and after I was coming to the close of my profession, we just sat down and he wanted to know some things about me. And he was willing to share some things about him. And I guess the teaching moment for me was having the ability to sit with someone and learn and have someone proactively actually think about differences and why we do things. And it was so fun. Ray Wilson was it was a joy. He had a incredibly wonderfully different life that I would never have imagined. Him growing in the South, me growing up in the West, him going to Chicago, going through a lot of different things. And so just sharing the background, that teaching moment told me that you have to be proactive. If you really want to understand people, you have to go beyond your comfort zone. You have to reach out and listen. And he really did that. He came to church with me. He did some things that was just very unique. So hands out for Ray.
You know what? I think that that's great because you're right. We never stop learning. And, I assumed, young, and as Mr. Laredo talked about, kindergarten and what have you. And then I love it. We hit all spectrums, even here later in life, you've never stopped. There's always a teachable moment. Excuse me. All righty. So we've already talked a little bit about COVID and you've already expressed that that's an issue. So let's see. So do you believe that GCCISD handled COVID appropriately? I am a firm believer that there is always room for improvement. What do you wish we would have done differently? And Mr. Renteria, you're first.
Well, first of all, I think they handled it correctly. I mean, with all the unknowns, we are still in uncharted waters when it comes to COVID and the school district. But like you said, there's always room for improvement. I think that some of the classes could have been smaller. It's hard to keep all the 6-foot distances and all the requirements when you got a full room of students everywhere. But I think that they handled it correctly. They kept it clean. The teachers did the best they could do with what they had at the time. So like I said, in the future, hopefully we can get some funding. We can be back face to face and go forward past COVID.
Awesome. All right. Who y'all know y'all's order? I think it's Mr. Poppy, right? And then we're about to go backwards in a second, just because I like to stay on my toes. All right. So Mr. Poppy.
Yeah, first and foremost, just want to thank administration and the teachers and the staff for pivoting so quickly about a year ago. I mean, it was truly uncharted territory. We were trying to figure things out, trying to figure out what guidance TA was giving, trying to just figure out what we can do each and every day. But they did a really good job just pivoting and just trying to work as fast as they can. I think this is probably the toughest year for any teacher. There's no doubt about it. We recognize it and we appreciate all the hard work. Hindsight's always 20/20. You can look back and say, but based on the information that we had at the time, starting, at the classroom level up to the board level, we felt like we did what's best for students and staff. I got comments made when we decided to do 100% virtual the first 3 weeks and delay the start of school. Based on the information we had at the time, we felt like that was best for students and staff, and things develop, and looking back, we can always relook at that, but there was just very little guidance. And at that time, we had no guidance from TEA. It came out a few days later. And then it continued to change. CDC protocols continued to change, trying to figure that out. But kudos to administration. Honestly, kudos to administration for everything they did. It was very tough. And so we recognize that and we appreciate it.
I agree. All right, Mr. Minson. So do you believe that GCCISD handled COVID appropriately? I'm a firm believer that there's always room for improvement. So what would you have done differently, if anything?
That's a hard question. It's crisis mode. And I think what needs to be called out is how quickly the district and everyone ramped up for the crisis. It was at first, you didn't believe it. And then soon families were affected, jobs were affected, and the education system was affected. Everything was falling apart very, very quickly. In the business world, I was deeply involved with that. And from a school district standpoint, the areas they did very well is trying to understand what they could do and get as much information to make the decisions and to try and pass some of that along. That's very difficult because, as was noted, it's always changing in a crisis mode. One of the things that is hard during a crisis is gathering data on how well the people you're serving are actually being served. And then also trying to understand clearly the people that are serving, how well they're surviving, okay? You can quickly get battle fatigue in a crisis mode. And I think that's one of the things I would say that we need to go back and look at very, very carefully. What happened to our teachers? Where are they at? I mean, I've heard many of them going home and just crying because of not knowing what to do or how to do it, or feeling that they just couldn't get what they needed to do with the resources they had. So that's, I think, very key, is to look at those type of people to move forward.
If I knew how to work this thing, oh my gosh, I've stopped it. I think that that's great, and I do believe that, yes, I think it was Mr. Poppy that said you did the best that you had with what you're, based off the information that you had or something. I think was it, yeah, and I'm with you on that. So all right, Mr. Laredo, if anything,
So,
what do you think we should have done different?
so I also want to commend administration, but I really, really want to commend two groups of people, parents and teachers, because you talk about different world. As a teacher, working from home last year was probably harder than working at school, because I was working morning till evening. I had kids texting and calling at 10 o'clock at night, and I know that our teachers were going through that as well. That being, honestly, I really want to applaud the teachers right now, because they're working with two worlds in one. They're working with virtual kids, and they're working with kids that are live in their classrooms, and that's very difficult to do, because you're juggling two different situations and trying to teach concepts. And I think that's the hardest part, is teaching concepts to our students. And I am just so very proud. I know that as a board, and we've tried to do something, but I know that as administration, they've really tried to find ways to help our teachers. I also want to commend Airmark, because Airmark did a fantastic job at distributing food to our kids, even through the winter storm, but distributing food to our kids and making sure they were fed during that crisis. That being said, there's a couple of notes I do have. One is citywide Wi-Fi. I think that's something that had been brought up in maybe the early 2000s that kind of died away, but it's time for us to look at something like that. I don't know how that even would work, but that's maybe a conversation we need to have. In addition to that, I do want to speak on the food distribution, because one of the parameters for people to be able to get food was they had to drive up there because of the COVID danger. Very little for me to be able to say that we need to improve on. More like we need to have ideas to prepare for something else. I don't think anybody expected anything like this to happen. But being able to give food for people that even don't have transportation, those are things that I would see. Wi-Fi and making sure that all of our kids get a meal are things that I think we could maybe improve a little bit on.
work this thing. So I agree. And you know what, that is a great point that you bring up. And yeah, it was mentioned earlier, you know, about Wi-Fi with and getting the internet to everybody. And that's, I don't know, it's definitely worth a conversation. I can tell you that. I had a message come through to me saying that people are asking why the other candidates didn't come. And I don't think I meant to address that from the very beginning. So this invitation was sent out to everybody. It was sent out several weeks ago initially. And everybody that you see responded. Mr. Sampson and Miss Barat-Timms, neither of them replied. I sent and I gave everybody a list of a couple of date options, you know, for the two. And then we kind of worked around the schedules that were there, but I never got a response from either of those. I sent out a second email yesterday when the Baytown Sun had requested, and you know, again, is this who all is confirmed? And is anybody else confirmed? I sent out a second email asking them to respond by 5 p.m. because that was when the Baytown Sun's deadline was for them to put it in the paper. And again, I never got a response. So that answers that question to the question that's coming in. All right, moving along. Okay, so this question came in more than, and I kind of like put a two together more than any other question that was kind of specific. And so I figured it was worth throwing in. So here we go. How do you feel about classroom indoctrination such as critical race theory, political ideology, religious advocacy, and other opinions being pushed on students? And I had to be honest with you. I had to look that up. So if you need to do the same, maybe I'm just like, I don't know. That's not some of those things I had to look up a little bit. So, okay. So again, the question is how do you feel about classroom indoctrination, such as critical race theory, political ideology, religious advocacy, and other opinions pushed on students? And Mr. Poppy, you are first.
All right. I would hope that education, hopefully, I would hope that we're educating, not indoctrinating. And so when I think of education, I think of fact-based, research-proven. Indoctrination would be someone's view or opinion, something that might not be fact-based, I guess. So I don't think the school system is the best advocate for opinion-based views. The goal is to be standardized and facts-based and research-focused.
Sounds good to me. you listen, yeah, when I was looking, I was like, oh, that's what it is. So I get you. All righty. And so next would be Mr. Minson.
Again, you like good, hard questions.
Well, okay, I already said I'm not taking credit for that one. No.
I think the key word in that is indoctrinate or something, where the school district takes a position and says, this is how everything is. One of the things that we're growing and learning as a society, and we're getting better information. I was in the data business. And it's very evident as we go through data, as we go back and look at things, how we viewed it 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, continually changes. So what we have to do is help our students understand that there's various viewpoints, and they need to understand how to make a decision on their own from the facts that are presented to them. They need to understand if it's a fact or if it's not a fact, how to research it, how to do that. Now, that's in the later years. In the earlier years, that should never be part of the discussion. Those children are too young to have the ability to define between truth and not truth or lies. So that's where we have to be very, very careful, like Ben was talking about, when we start introducing the ability to make cognitive and well-informed decisions. With all of the data we have, we're being overwhelmed, we're being flooded with data. We're going to have to teach our children how to sift through that and find the kernels of truth so that they can live.
All right, Mr. Laredo.
Thank you. You know, those are very touchy subjects, but those are things that are taught. I think Mr. Poppy had a good idea. The difference between education and indoctrination. I think it's important for our kids to be exposed to different ideas. Those are subjects that are taught at colleges and universities. Those are subjects taught in high schools across the world, really. And when we don't touch on subjects that kids need to know about, we leave them blind to not being able to make good decisions on their own. It's a very tough question because it can be it's really kind of like up to the eyes of the beholder. But honestly, I don't expect some things to be taught in math class, for example. But I think it's important that those subjects be taught in world geography, some about different religions, not indoctrination of a religion, in government, and so other social studies in English class. When you read things such as literature from the Middle Ages, where a lot of it was influenced by religion, or when you study the Renaissance in art, where those things were studied and were based on a lot in the religion and in the Renaissance, those are things that I think influence the reasoning of why the world was in those times. I think it's important that as the world evolves and as we change as a society, that we know what's important for our kids to be ready to make positive decisions, not indoctrination, but definitely education.
Y'all are going deep. It's a deep question, so I'm with you. I follow. All right, Mr. Renteria.
Yeah, I'm not going to go so deep. I'm just going to say specific things like the critical race theory, a definite no. No to that. Now, as far as religion and prayer back in school.
That was my mistake. It didn't, hold
That's-
on.
Okay.
I'm cutting you like 10, 15 seconds because I stopped it and then started it, but it didn't reset. So go ahead.
Okay, do I need to start over?
No, you're good.
Okay.
I cut you 10 seconds. Now we've already made up for it. So keep going.
Okay. So again, critical race theory, that's a negative, definite no. As far as prayer and religion back in school, it's up to the students. That's my opinion. As far as politics and government, teach them the basics, let them decide where they want, what they want to choose and how they believe, and let them follow their own upbringing taught by their parents, I guess, but never indoctrination of anything. Again, I just think that's where I stand.
Good deal. Okay, so I guess I didn't need to give you that 15-second dot. That was great.
I'm good.
All right, moving along. Okay, excluding COVID-19, what is the #1 challenge facing public schools today? And Poppy, this is you, because I said that we were starting and going backwards now. Okay. So excluding COVID-19, we already know, we've touched on it, and I've got one other question. I think that hits one last, dip on it, but excluding COVID-19, what is the #1 challenge facing public schools today?
I think if you ask 100 different people, you're probably going to get 100 different answers.
I'm hoping to get 5 different ones.
Yeah, but I'm gonna go in with, school safety is top priority. If you don't have safety in schools, you can't educate. So that's #1. I'm gonna take that to the side and say, hey, that's #1. That's assumed. Taking COVID aside, even though taking COVID aside, there's still an impact of COVID. They're still closing the gaps. There's still different behaviors and things that are happening. My boss showed me a slide a couple months ago, and it showed the influences of student that are on students from 30 or 40 years ago. The biggest influence was what was going on in their home. And it showed that over time, the biggest influence now is what's on the internet and what's on social media. You know, obviously 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have internet. So you weren't getting bombarded with all these influences. So I think with the influences of students today, there's a different type of behavior, and that could stimulate different attitudes, which could lead to being absent, having behavior issues at school. So be able to handle that and work with the students and be mindful of what's influencing them and how they're being influenced. So I think building the relationship as administration and teachers and being aware that it's different than when we were students and kids. There's different influences and things that are going on. Be able to relate with the students in that way. And then again, I mean, just the literacy gaps, the different gaps, the social, low socioeconomic, trying to provide resources there. And because of the economy, you're going to have problems with funding, sustainable funding going forward. So continue to advocate for that, and that way there's the right resources and the right students to close the gaps.
Okay, well, the goal is that we have to have 5 different answers now, because he said that in the very beginning. No, I'm kidding. Y'all can use the same answers. Yeah, y'all can use some of the same answer, whatever. But I mean, Poppy did bring up a point. No, okay. So going backwards, Renteria, you are next. So excluding COVID-19, what is the #1 challenge facing public schools today?
I would say it's parent involvement and education for parent involvement. That's the #1 issue. The more they're involved, the better the kids are in learning and getting an education.
Good deal. All right, you did that in like 10 seconds. Good job. We're gonna actually, we might even finish early. Y'all are following the rules. I'm so proud. So proud, because I mean, I know at board meetings, if you don't shut up, no, we'll hack you off. All right, so going backwards, Mr. Laredo, what is #1 problem that you say?
Well, I don't want to necessarily repeat what Mr. Poppy said. Safety is a big issue. Funding, you know, I know there's a couple of bills out there trying to get more pay for teachers, you know, because of the amount of work. It's not a 40-hour job, we all know. But there's 2 things that I really want to bring up. One is the infrastructure issue. We have a lot of need. You know, I think our district's done a pretty good job with the academies, but I think we have a large need for our kids to be better prepared for the jobs of tomorrow. I know that, you know, I remember when I was a kid, we had a presentation where somebody told us, you know, when I was in high school, that's all you needed. And then as I got older, it was, you need some college and you need a bachelor's degree. Well, now it's a niche, and getting on that earlier, you know, my daughter took advantage of the CNA program at Lee High School, and she's working as a CNA right now. So making sure that we have all those infrastructures in place for all those careers that are coming up, you know, such as materials, tools, any kind of preparation our kids need. I really do think the academies are taking care of that, but just having the funding to be able to create more of those for our kids to be able to have that advantage. The other thing that I want to talk about a little bit is mental wellness. I think it's important for our kids to be able, you know, community schools does a really great job with us. We have KAIS workers, we have our counselors, but I think that's something that, you know, in the last few years, you know, and it deals with safety, because we have issues such as, you know, threats being made on social media bullying, things like that our kids are dealing with, that we didn't have to, because simply those didn't exist back then. And we're passing notes, you like me, yes, no, maybe. But now the kids are dealing with real things from real people, and maybe they think they're talking to a friend, but it might be somebody who's not a friend, and having the kids deal with that on an everyday basis, I think is something that we as a school district and as a society to deal with a little bit better.
Good deal. All right, Mr. Minson, aside from COVID, what is the #1 challenge facing public schools today?
I think you've got some four great answers, so I'm going to add a little different dimension. I think the greatest challenge of education today is not looking to the future. I think I'm going to use the word COVID, but COVID did something to us. It allowed what we call a step change in the paradigm of how we interact around us. In saying that, I would ask the question, what is our classroom going to be like in 5 years? What does it need to be like in 10 years? Do we need the buildings? Technology is changing very, very quickly. Our kids are going to be going to different types of learning in secondary school, as was highlighted. Are they going to be ready to learn in the workplace and in secondary education to be able to be successful? We've got to align ourselves in all those areas. And that includes not just the STEM, but also in art, in the different areas of athletics. We need to really rethink education from what we had, which was a lecture in class, to what it needs to be going forward. And we need to use the COVID as an opportunity to organize ourselves, set certain priorities to allow that to happen. Once we get out of the crisis, we need to move into a very proactive strategy of what is happening in the world and how do we prepare our students for that future.
Well, great questions. I'm glad that y'all honestly can keep up with this, because I got a little nervous. I mean, I know that the questions that I'm asking are tough. That was on purpose. But it's not tripping up anybody. So I am super excited, honestly, to continue rolling. So y'all are good. Okay. Do you believe this? Let's see. Do you believe that the school board should listen and consider the voices of people who do not pay GCCISD taxes? And Mr. Renteria, you are first.
Well, I don't have a problem with listening to people who don't pay taxes, or I don't have a problem with listening to people who don't vote. But the bottom line is we need to listen to everyone and find out what is the best interest for all the students to be successful in life, and how we can help develop them in terms of education. So I think that the answer to that would be our educators. Listen to them and find out from them what they believe is the best recourse for teaching our kids.
All right. Good deal. Next is Mr. Laredo.
That's actually pretty good. I would agree with that. I think it's important to listen to all perspectives. Sometimes not being in the middle of a situation, and maybe looking at it from a different perspective from somebody that doesn't maybe have the direct influence, they bring a different perspective or a different idea to solving different issues. On another note, our legislatures make a lot of influence on us, and they don't pay Goose Creek taxes, yet they make decisions that directly affect all our kids' lives for good or for bad, because some are good decisions, some of them are not. So I think I do agree with that as well, that it's very important that everybody has the right to have an opinion. And we live in a country that gives us the First Amendment. And honestly, looking from things from a different perspective, I think is very important to solving issues.
All righty. Next would be Mr. Minson.
I would answer the question a little differently. I would say it is important that we listen. I think as decision makers, it's how much weight you put on that input. And that really depends, as Mr. Laredo stated, you know, you don't want to be blindsided, but you also need to understand who have a vested interest in the outcome, who are going to have to live with the decision. That's hard because that's subject by subject, that's issue by issue. And we have to be sensitive. We don't live in an island here in Goose Creek. We live in a society, and so we have to live in that society. But we do have control over some things. And so we need to make sure that there's a good, strong balance between the input and the expected outcomes, and those being impacted by those expected outcomes.
All right. And then I guess next goes to Mr. Poppy.
Yeah, I think it's vital to listen to all voices. Doesn't matter if they're GCCISD taxpayers or not. And that comes at the board level as well as administration level. Some of the best practices in schools come from other districts. Our district is asking other districts what's their best practice on things. And then we implement that in the district. But I also do think that the school district is a reflection of the local community. So you got to take that into consideration. And then also, and there's something I was listening to a couple of weeks ago from another school district. They said, let's put public back in public education. So that's kind of the thing I've been thinking about the last couple of weeks is, you know, when we do things, you know, there's times we take things out to the committee, there's times we make decisions, but we need to have the input from the public. And it's not the public of just taxpayers, but we need to look at the public and then make decisions based on the reflection of the community.
All right. All right. This is my favorite question. So I took, maybe I said that before. No, I really think this is my favorite. I don't know. I like them all. Okay. So let's talk money. GCCISD is responsible for the education of approximately 23,000 children. It is also the fourth largest employer in the entire Ship Channel region. So I've heard that it's the largest employer for Baytown, and that is probably very likely, but I couldn't find data to support that because then I looked up Exxon, you know, what have you, that's what it went back. But in the Ship Channel region, it is the fourth largest employer, which goes all the way out LaPorte and everything. I thought that was incredibly interesting. All right. And so with, you know, over 3,000 employees, essentially, you are responsible for approving a budget that affects approximately 25,000 property owners conservatively. So this is quite a responsibility. What value and experience do you bring into reviewing and adopting a budget? It's a lot of money that we trust y'all with. All right, Mr. Laredo, you are first.
Well, I can sit here and tell you I've been a part of the budgetary process for Goose Creek as long as I've been on the board, and I've been on the board for a little bit of time. But more than that, I think people want us to spend money where it needs to be spent. There's that old adage, you get what you pay for. Sometimes people see things that, especially in the public, that, you know, I'll give you an example, iPads. When we first started talking about iPads, people were really upset. You're wasting our money. They're not worth it. Why are you using iPads? And now look at us. You know, even before COVID started, Lee High School was a iPad, Apple recognized school because the amount of innovation they were doing with the iPads. My son's in the STEM program at Lee High School, and it's like one of the most basic tools that they use in designing things for printing, for creating, for designing. Those are things that we can't shortchange our kids on. I mean, I pay taxes in this district, and I want my kids to have what they need to have. You know, I want to make sure, you know, we're very competitive when it comes to pay. Why? Because we want good people to work here, and we want to retain good people to stay here and be able to compete, teach our kids so they can compete with any other child in our state, in our nation, in our planet. So as far as being responsible for the budget, we need to build safe schools. That's the most important thing. Schools that are going to last. And I think we've done pretty good job. I think our average lifespan is about 50 years, and that's pretty good for a school. And some of them a little bit longer. But in addition to that, making sure that our kids have the tools and the technology available to be able to work and compete in tomorrow's world.
All right. Mr. Minson.
I think that's a unfair question for the others, mainly because of my background. I designed and built ExxonMobil's downstream budgeting and redesigned it. And so I was dealing with billions and billions of dollars. But Mr. Laredo, I think, put it very well. It's not the amount of money, it's how you allocate that money. And to do it effectively, you have to have a very good vision or strategy that's translated into a very well-defined tactical plan that's then moved into an operational execution. If you don't have all three in place, numbers don't make any sense. You can't understand. A budget is to help you understand how well you're executing your tactical and also your strategy. That's why we have budgets. And it's to give stewardship to our property owners that how we are executing is getting us the most value to our students. So, a little unfair for the others because, I've done this for 35 years and a distinguished architect in doing that. But yeah, it's I think, Augustine, you said it very well. It's the priorities. If you don't get your priorities right, you can screw up real quickly.
All right, good deal. I love how I listen to each of y'all supporting each other in different ways and stuff. And y'all all kind of, there's a lot of similarities. There are differences, of course, with everything, but then also and not on every subject are there similarities, but on, quite a few, there are similarities between everybody. And it could be hard for some people. All right, so now we go to Poppy, right?
So to me, and I work in public education and I'm a CFO and I develop the budget at the district that I work at. To me, in public education, budget equals accountability. Your budget equals accountability. One of the things we did a couple of years ago was to create a strategic plan, have committees and subcommittees, public input to create the strategic plan. And one of the points on there was good financial stewardship, making sure that we are using taxpayer dollars wisely and we're prioritizing that appropriately. Anyone can adopt the budget, but if you're like, I think Mr. Minson said, if you're not monitoring it, you have to monitor and make sure you stay within that budget. And I truly believe that if you adopt, I think you used the word conservative. If you adopt a conservative budget that focuses on maximizing and using the resources and maximizing it in the right areas to be effective, you're going to have a great school district. And more importantly, you're going to also build trust with the community that you're using their taxpayer dollars with the most impact. So really just accountability and just making sure you can look at a PowerPoint. I've looked at them the last 4 years of a PowerPoint of the first budget workshop. Everyone looks at the numbers. Go look at the assumptions. What are the assumptions that administration is making on the budget? Is the assumption an unfunded mandate from the state? Are they assuming that? What are they assuming to make sure that you're actually looking at a conservative budget where you don't adopt it and you end up spending more than revenue was projected, or they overestimated revenue? So really looking at the information and then just working with administration. I mean, House Bill 3 2 years ago was huge impact to how schools were funded and the amount of funding we received. So just working with administration, making sure that we're all understanding it the same way and in the best interest of the community.
Good deal. All right, Mr. Renteria, and I see that like it's gotten dark there, but I'm excited. I mean, honestly, it makes me happy even if you are in your car on your phone, you're here, you know, and I mean so that makes me really happy. No, you're good. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we are
Right.
all working, you know, with the best that we have with what we have or whatever, right? So, okay. So you're up. What is your experience or what value or experience do you bring in reviewing and adopting a budget?
Well, first of all, let me just say this is, to me, I heard what Mr. Menson said, that it's not a fair question, but it is a fair question because that's what we're going to deal with when we're up there. You're going to deal with the budget. You have to know what you're going to do. You know, I'll give you, for instance, an example. Exxon was one time a leading in the industry, not so much anymore. Okay, it changes, things change, and the budget is very important. Don't get me wrong, but it's a fair question for us to answer because we're going to be dealing with that and we're going to be voting on issues that pertain to money. So first of all, I just think that we need to live within our means when we have that budget. That would be a good coin phrase, I guess, that we need to live by, is live within our means. And more importantly, if we want our kids to be educated, we need to pay our teachers. We need to have the best quality teachers. We don't need to be losing our teachers to other school districts that are paying more in Deer Park or Pasadena and Houston. We need Baytown to be up with the pay market so that we can hire and recruit some of the best teaching and teachers in the field. That's very important for our kids' education. And along with that, we need to stay up with technology and all the modern things that are going on, stay contemporary. So again, you know, the budget is very important. It's a big issue. I dealt with the budget when I was on city council. Millions and millions of dollars were reappropriated for infrastructure. In this case, it probably be school buildings, you know, uh, Apple iPods, computers, things like that, teacher pay. But nonetheless, I mean, it's going to be an issue that we have to face and deal with. I think we need to live within our means, and it's a fair question to be asked by everyone and answered by everyone.
All right. Okay. So and you just mentioned teachers, so that's a great segue to this next question. Because I have had many of conversations with teachers since the start of the pandemic. Many share the same concern and frustrations parents have with classrooms using a hybrid model. This has further complicated children with special needs. CPS reporting rates were down by 80%, and other districts have discontinued virtual learning. What would you say to the teacher that is debating on leaving our district because they feel the pressure and the responsibility of their students that are failing, and to the students whose GPA has dropped? And with that being said, I kind of just want to say one other note is the fail rates and things like that. This is not something that is independent to Goose Creek, you know, when it's fail rates and what have you, that it's something that the state of Texas has dealt with across the board, schools across the nation. And so that is not an attack on Goose Creek. I don't want y'all to think that for a moment when I ask that. So again, to kind of repeat the back of the question, and that was, what would you say to a teacher who is debating on leaving our district or leaving teaching because they feel the pressure and responsibility of their students that are failing? And what would you say to the students whose GPA is hurting? And that was Minson is first. Yes, Mr.
Right.
Minson.
What would I say?
Poor Mr. Poppy, he's over there. I'm sorry. Like, I just, the look on his face, I just want to bring attention. He's like, thanks, Kim.
I'm glad he's
like,
first. No.
no. I think he likes me better when I only have 2 minutes or 3 minutes to address the board now. No. Okay,
so-
go ahead.
So
Yes, sir.
I think to start that is when someone is going through a crisis, as we've gone through, and is on the front line like our teachers are, I think it's normal for them to feel distressed. What you have to do is give them hope of a better future. And that is to clearly outline where you're going to go to rectify the problem. If you don't give them vision, they will leave. And I think that's what is critical right now. They've done a Herculean task, but if they don't see that there's an end to what's happening, they will leave. I don't care how much you pay them or anything else. The stress is just too high. So we need to do that. You had a first part of the question. Do you think it's right that teachers should be teaching both virtually and in class? No, I don't. I think you should do one or the other. I think trying to do both at the same time is you're getting the worst of the situation. I've taught, I've done different things to be able, to be on a broadcast and a webcam and to do live. There's just a different feeling when you're in a live classroom versus a webcast, and you teach differently. And that needs to be brought in and stuff. And to be able to do it at the same time, I think is asking too much.
All right. Mr. Poppy, are you ready? Are you still nervous?
I'm ready.
Are you sure?
No.
No? Okay.
I would hope that it didn't get to the point where a teacher's asking me, why should I keep teaching or be in the district? I would hope that we're creating the policies and we're hiring the right people in administration to build a relationship with the teacher, to make sure they have the adequate support and the resources they need to help those students and to feel successful in the classroom. No matter what the outcome is, at least we're providing success and the best we can to the teacher. And I was listening to something, and I read a lot of leadership stuff, and one of it said, quit calling yourself like a nonprofit organization, because that's the status in the tax code. So nonprofits need to call themselves impact organizations. So when we look at the school district and we say, hey, we're an impact organization, let's make an impact. It goes back to what Mr. Minson talked about, creating the vision and the purpose and showing them the impact that they made. Even though the GPA might have gone down for the student, or they didn't get the highest test score that day compared to last year, the students are more than a number. And you asked one of the questions earlier, what teacher impacted you when you went throughout school? The teacher is going to realize they're creating impact to students without them even knowing it, without a letter grade associated with it. So hopefully, as a district and as administration, they're building relationships, because people don't leave and quit jobs, they quit bosses. So.
Good deal. All right. Are y'all ready? I haven't had to do this to anybody in a good long time. Y'all are doing good. All right. Mr. Renteria, you are up. So again, we're talking about the pressure and responsibility of students failing.
Well, I don't blame the teachers on a student's failure, first of all. I know a lot of teachers that, in fact, I taught for a while, but they spend a lot of time teaching. Not only do they spend a lot of time teaching, but they spend a lot of time in preparation, whether it's before school, after school, getting ready, making their doing their curriculum, getting them ready for students. They spend a lot of time, for the amount of money that they make. In my opinion, if you pay them right, they feel like, you know, they're getting compensated for all the time and effort that they put in before school, during school, after school. Some teachers work on the weekends. Some teachers are out buying materials that the school can't buy, that don't give them or supply to them. They're out paying for some of the students to have different things like computers, internet, paper, pencils, stuff like that. So again, my opinion is, yes, you know, pay the teachers right, and then they'll be ready to work and do what they need to do, all the extra work that they do. They won't feel like, you know, like after all that they've done, that if a student doesn't make it, you know, they've done everything, they put everything on the table for that student. I know that a lot of the students in virtual learning have not been as successful as face-to-face education. So, I mean, I think that, you know, they need to be compensated for that with, you know, pay incentives. Again, I mentioned it earlier, pay incentives for help, for substitutes, for tutors, things of that nature to help the teacher help the student. And then everybody will be successful.
Good deal. All right, Mr. Laredo, you're up and you're currently a teacher. So
I'm a department head as well for my department. Sometimes I've had this happen, and I've had it from teachers here in Goose Creek, and teachers and where I teach it in Pasadena ISD at South Houston. And I want to give them a big old hug. If it wasn't for COVID, I understand the frustration. Always when my wife teaches, and when she started teaching, and every time I've mentored a few teachers in my career, and some of them are here at Goose Creek, and I've even had former students that are here as teachers in Goose Creek. And anytime a person's going into teaching, I always tell them one thing: so you have the ability to make or break a person's life. It doesn't matter if they're pre-K or they're seniors. You have the ability to influence a person's life. The amount of children that you will touch in 1 year is more than a lot of people do in their whole entire lives. I've told my wife, when I pass, there are students that I want them to be my pallbearers because they're people very special to me. I want teachers to know that you have an important part in this machine called society. It's okay to get frustrated. It's okay to get sad. It's okay to get angry. But you have to remember that you are a beacon of light for the children in your classroom. Even the ones that you don't think are listening, they're listening. A guy told me one time when I first started teaching, he asked me, "What do you teach?" And back then I taught Spanish. I said, "Teach Spanish." He goes, "No, you don't. You teach kids." And you know what? Just like we as teachers are frustrated, our kids are frustrated. Sometimes you have to hit pause. Sometimes the lesson has to wait. And I think it's important for teachers to know. In fact, I'm telling you, for any teacher that's out there right now, I think it's important for you to know it's okay to hit pause. It's okay to go outside and breathe some air with your kids. It's okay to hand out, a pencil and eraser, something to make kids feel good. It's okay to talk about a movie. It's okay to be human with our kids. You have that ability and you have that right, because we're dealing with humans. Hang in there. I'm hoping that the light is coming soon.
Yeah. And so I wanted to wait until after I asked that question, whereas I've prefaced most of the questions. I wanted to wait and after, and that question did come from a teacher that teaches high school in our district, and who has seen her students failing that she's never experienced before, and it really is, hurting. And she does feel pressure from her administration, like, your kids are failing, and that's just something that she's never personally experienced before. So I think that y'all all get it, and I hope that our teachers do feel encouraged by all 5 of y'all, because they've hit it just as hard, or been hit just as hard as our students. All right, so we're almost through the list. We're almost there, and I want to thank y'all for hanging out. So I have so I had one more question, but then I thought of one other one at the last minute, kind of, sort of, because it got brought up from a couple of different perspective. So, all right. So the last big question that I have, with school shootings and teen suicide rates on the rise, our district has seen an increase in physical altercations at schools. 2 major incidents this year included bomb threats to 3 of our campuses and photographs with teens with guns in the bathroom of another campus. What is your plan to help make our schools safer? Now, since we've all gone forward and backward and everybody has had anything, I'll let y'all pause for a moment. And then whoever wants to answer first, I'll take it. Not everybody at once. No, I'm kidding. We're pausing.
Since I'm District 1 and I'm first, I'll go first. What you said is, what you described are symptoms of something that are happening to our youth, whether it's lashing out in violence or trying to draw attention or whatever. Trying to be able to manage that and to prevent it, you have to go and understand very clearly what is causing it. Why is the anger there? Why do they feel that they need to do what they're doing? We have to look at what's happening in the home, what's happening in our community. Are we doing the things as parents, as educators, to try and create a safe environment so that every child is valued and they don't need to lash out and hurt others or to do something? Mutual respect is very difficult if it's not parroted by the parents and by the community. So what I'm saying is we may be the problem. We may be the problem. They're just executing in a more visual way what they're seeing us do to ourselves.
Oh. All right.
If it's okay, can I go next? Is that all right?
Bring it.
So, earlier when COVID started, my family and I had the privilege, we're honored to help out with some of the food distribution, and the lines were really long. Right now, there's a need. Right now, there's stress levels. Parents are, we have economic issues. We have kids going, and all this starts to bubble up. And I know that it's important. We have Goose Creek police officers that I think are doing a really great job. In fact, the best stories I hear from kids and from the police officers are the relationships that they build with each other. I think it goes back to mental wellness. I think it's very important that we talk to kids and ask them, and if we see something wrong, not be afraid to have breakout sessions, to work, continue to support things such as communities and schools, our CAIS workers, our counselors. Recently we've separated that counseling to be one part to deal with our scheduling and guidance, and the other part to doing with mental well-being with our kids. I think it's a great testament that a couple of some of these issues have been solved, thankfully, because kids were not afraid to be able to speak to adults about it. I'm going to talk about my friend David Yepes, who's an AP at Gentry, who stopped a kid who had a gun, and he was able to do that because a kid went up to him and he trusted Mr. Yepes to say, hey, there's something going on. We have to make sure that our kids feel safe enough to be able to report those things. We've always had issues throughout society with kids that need a little bit more support because of lack of parental guidance, because of, outside influences that go into their lives, and therefore they act out in classrooms and act out in our schools. But at the level that we're at now, I think it's extremely important that our kids feel comfortable enough to go to us as leaders, academic leaders, whether that be a principal, AP teacher, custodian, cafeteria worker, whoever it may be, that they feel the confidence to be able to report these things to make our school safe. Thank you.
All right. who's next?
I'll jump in. So kind of what Mr. Laredo talked about, it goes back to relationships that the teachers, the staff have with the students. I know, like what Mr. Minson talked about, there's a whole nother dynamic of what's going on, the influences that are out there, the behavior wellness, and being mindful of that, and then making sure that, you know, we're aware of that, even if it becomes a disciplinary issue, that we're handling it appropriately based on what's going on today. And then just you know, having the proper procedures in place, the training on staff if something does happen, and you know, the big key is prevent. You know, do everything that we can to prevent anything from catastrophic from happening. And then to continue to invest in safety and you spend the resources adequately to hopefully, again, prevent anything from like that happening. But I think a lot of it is there's a lot of stressors out there that students are dealing with, things that, you know, we probably don't even think about. But you know, bridging that relationship from staff is crucial and key, and being mindful of it. So.
With you, y'all are doing good. I'm impressed with all of y'all so far. Mr. Andrea, what you got on this? So
Well, I'll hit a few bullets real quick. Security. We need to hire good security leadership at the top that can help protect our kids while they're studying. I think we need to work in partnership with the Baytown Police Department and have them at the school. I think we need to focus on bullying. Bullying is a big deal, not only in the lower levels, but on the high school and junior high levels. I think we need to focus on drugs. Drugs and gangs have a lot to do with those kind of things that are happening in our schools where there's violence. I think we need to focus on those issues and think we need to find out these kids and these students that are involved in those type of activities and make sure that we can help them in some way. But you know, if we focus on those issues, whether security, the Baytown PD, you know, bullying and drugs and gangs, that's where all your problems come from. Some of these people are in need right now. Some of these young men and women think, you know, selling drugs and doing these kind of things will help, you know, and that's what they do. And they bring it into the schools. They try to do those things amongst their peers, you know. So those are some of the things that we need to focus on to make sure that our schools are safe. We had 2 lockdowns already, you know, in the school district, and we need to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And I think that if we take that course, we'll be okay.
all right, so for those of you that know me and those of you that don't, you know, just here's it's kind of a little reality check on that. School safety is super important to me. So that is probably my number one, and you hit it, bullying. That is my baby, you know, when it comes to that. Being a parent that almost lost her child to school bullying. So, all right. I've got technically 3 more questions, but not really. So I've got two of the questions, or one of the questions is for just those that are the opponents that are running. And then the other one is for those that are already on the school board. And then I've got one more quick, easy question for all of y'all. So thank you for hanging tight. I did get another message briefly ago that was asking about the division of the, and I'm not getting all the messages, but I've got some, you know, people that are like, hey, this came in, whatever, that was asking about the division of the counseling department and the college and career readiness. And so what that was, and I mean, y'all are welcome to interject, but Dr. Remini Kerr, who was over college and career college and career readiness and counseling, like that whole department. Her position was kind of like split off a little bit, right? And so she is just over now counseling and wellness, right? And we have somebody new, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting it, I don't think, that is over the college, that is kind of over college and career readiness. So that's accurate. That's what you were speaking of, right, Mr. Laredo? Kim Fox,
Yes,
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, just put it on the
Okay.
chat.
okay, thank you. Yeah, Kim Fox, that is over, that is supposed to, be over the college and career readiness portion of counseling, to do like a split there. And there were different departments. I only just know as much as I do because I am the mental health chair of our school health advisory committee and stuff. And so we work with that. And I've sat on our mental health, other college and career readiness committees and things like that we've had. So if that gives a little bit of a summary on that. Okay, so school board members, do you completely support your voting history? If no, please explain. And I'll take you over first. Laredo's muted. Poppy.
All right, I'll go.
All right.
I support 100% my voting history. As a board member, we're making decisions based on the information that we have at hand. And I'm committed to learning and growing and developing and continuing to be objective in my decisions and look at data-driven decisions. If data is not available, then I'm looking at community input.
All right, good deal. And Mr.
I
Laredo.
also feel the same way. I'm supportive of the decisions I've made. I really don't have anything else to say about that. I'm using the information that I have in hand. Same thing.
Alrighty, good deal. And that is, we do try to make the best decision that we can based off of the information that we have at that time. That is a statement I use quite frequently. So, all right. My opponents that are here, the question for you is, why did you decide that now is the time to run for school board? Mr. Minson, or yeah, well, I don't know who, Mr. Renteria, it doesn't matter. I'm not picking y'all then. Look, I did my due diligence. I went forward, I went backward, and now.
Okay, look, let me go first. I respect Mr. Minson and his choice to go first, but let me try this time. All right, I'll go first. The reason I ran is, number one, is because of the students and education. That's the bottom line. I want to make sure that everybody has an equal and equitable opportunity to learn. That's my number one. The students are number one. In fact, I hope that, our education is competing with other districts in the area like Katy and all these other areas that have high marks in education. But there are other issues also. I feel like other board members are not listening to the public. And I think that, as a board member, we need to listen to the public. I don't think we should have an agenda. I don't have an agenda. I think that, that my whole objective would be to make sure that the school district is good, that teachers are getting paid, that, we're hiring the right superintendent, not overpaying him, paying the school teachers right, and keeping up with technology, making sure that we have everything that we need. And I want to keep the name Robert E. Lee. I'm tired of the cancel culture stuff, and that's why I'm running.
I'm pausing you. Yeah, I forgot to give you your 10 seconds. So I just kind of extended you the same thing that I did to Mr. Laredo because I didn't keep it up. So already earlier when I screwed up, my bad.
No problem.
All right. And Mr. Minson, why did you decide now is the time to run?
I think the primary reason was since I recently retired as of January 31st, I had time. The commitment to the board is a significant commitment. I think I have some skills and talents that I could bring. especially in the areas of understanding the futures and strategies and where we need to go. That's sort of the technical question. The real answer is my grandchildren. My grandchildren go to GCCISD. They're the most important thing to me. And I want to be involved in their lives, and I want to help set the direction so that they can be successful. And you can't do that, in my mind, and do it passively and sit back and just Monday quarterback the decisions of the board. Either I'm going to get involved or I'm going to shut myself up. So that's why I decided to run.
Alrighty. Okay, so this is the last one. Are y'all ready for this? This just came to me, and I think that it's great because y'all are considered leaders in our community. And so my question, no, hold on a second. I'm not even going to tell you the question yet. We're going to select on who's going in what order first. So who's going first? Raise your hand. Oh, come on, volunteers. No, it's not a hard one. Somebody has to select who's going to go first. I will draw. Okay, there we go. Mr. Minson went first. And number 2. Okay, Mr. Poppy. Number 3 is who wants to go third? All right, Mr. Laredo and Mr. Renteria, you are 4th. Okay, here we go. What is your definition of leadership? Mr. Minson, you're up first because you volunteered for first.
Yeah. The analogy I use is that a leader is in front of the herd, not behind the herd. They're the ones that have to go out and make hard decisions and help guide those behind them to a better place. So leadership is being able to understand where you're going, influence those so that they desire to come with you, and encourage them when they get tired. It's not easy. And there's a lot of times in leadership, you're going to be criticized, but you've got to have thick skin as a leader and be able to really focus on why you're doing this and the end game. What are you really trying to accomplish, and not let the little things divert you and take you off task. So leadership is really setting clear priorities, setting a good strategy, and then driving it through. And that sometimes is tough.
All right, so I guess I'm up. All right. Well, yeah, leadership is influencing people, giving them direction, motivating them to accomplish a specific mission or task. And that's kind of your standard military definition that's in my head. Mr. Minson talked about direction, talked about vision. I agree with all those things. Talk about motivating. An Army Ranger would say, follow me, and the response would be lead the way. So that's what a leader does. The leader leads, takes the noise out of the equation, focuses on the purpose and the mission, and goes in that direction. And all those that follow the leader to the big purpose or the task at hand. So with the school district, the board sets the vision. The superintendent's there to take that vision and execute and lead it under the direction of the board. But it's about getting people on the same page, moving in the right direction for the best purpose. So.
All right, Mr. Laredo.
I think you had started that question with leadership in the community. I think leadership is a lot about tact, and it's a lot about decisiveness. But more than that, it's making sure you're looking out for all. I think one of the most important parts of leadership is character. Having character, and having character develops trust. Making sure that people, you don't have to always be, be the most popular person, but you have to lead a life, not just in your leadership role, but lead a life in that you set the example for other people, doing things that brings goodness to your name, so that people trust the decisions you make and trust you to follow you wherever you may need to be. It's about doing what's right no matter what happens. Sometimes, as we're human, we let our emotions get a hold of us sometimes, but honestly, it's about going out and looking out for all people around you, doing what's right, not necessarily what's popular. That's how I define leadership.
All right. And Mr. Renteria, your definition of leadership, please, sir.
My definition of leadership, can y'all see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. My definition of leadership is simply, it's an art of motivating people to accomplish a common goal and to be successful. In this case, it would be education. Motivating people, inspiring people on all levels. I remember when Irma Bundage, my counselor at Robert E. Lee High School, saw me in a faculty meeting, and she walked in and she said, "Is that Mercedes Renteria?" She was surprised that she saw me in a faculty meeting. Why? I don't know, but it inspired others to see that I was actually an educator. And I think it takes example. I've been to school. I grew up in this school. I'm a product of Baytown. I know all about education, and I was raised in Old Baytown. I know exactly. I could have been involved in other things, but I didn't. I chose. It's about teaching people to make the right choices, to choose the right. It's about being open and honest. It's not about having an agenda. It's not about doing things that you want to do to change the city of Baytown, or names like changing the Robert E. Lee name. No, it's not about that.
That sounds
It
like
has
an
nothing to
attack.
do
Don't
with
do that.
So okay, no. I'm just saying, it's not an agenda. It's a way that you're honest with people. You tell them that you're there for education, and you do your best to try to offer that opportunity in technology and hiring the best teachers.
All right. Yes. So yeah. And I think I understood where you went, and it was just a little rough around the edges right there, I think. But yes.
Hey,
alrighty.
being honest is what it's all about.
Alrighty. And authenticity. I am all for authenticity through and through. So alrighty. Wow. Well, I made it through all my questions. Okay. I really, really want to thank each of y'all for being here this evening. I did a brief look kind of on, my Facebook. And so I didn't, I just picked, and I just want to kind of look over real quick. Because my personal Facebook currently right now has 34 shares, 104 comments, and 52 are watching just on my personal Facebook right now, and that doesn't include whoever is watching on whatever groups. So I know that this is something that is really important to our community, and I'm so glad to be able to give this platform. So just throwing out some comments that I've seen that I just read, and I can't look at all of them, so this is, I'm not like picking and choosing, but and I don't want to say anybody's names. Y'all can all go read if you're not on my Facebook, but I think I am attached to all of y'all. You're more than welcome to go read, but you know, I think random drug testing should be expanded, not just the students and extracurricular. Let's see, focus on bullying and drugs. I'm looking, just scrolling down, there was the comment of asking about the division of the wellness and the college and career readiness. There's a lot of debate. I'm almost scared to go read when this is all said and done. Is there anything else that that any of y'all would like to add very briefly? I'm not gonna, you know, that we've already had our opportunity to be able to go through those, and there will be another opportunity. Y'all have already all agreed. I hope I didn't scare y'all off to come back and meet with me again on the 22nd of April. All of y'all have agreed to that. I know that there was, you know, a couple of scheduling conflicts, but it worked out, everybody, for the 22nd, I think. Is that still a thumbs up? Can I get a thumbs up from everybody? Okay, good deal. And hopefully maybe we might have 2 other candidates that realize I'm not quite so scary that might want to join us. That would be great. Anything, so briefly in closing, I'll give y'all an opportunity, not 2 minutes, you're getting 1. Tell also people your area, again, your district. And so not so much like using this to open up another can of worms, but how somebody could get in contact with you. So if y'all are watching, grab out your pen and paper or go to your little Facebook, search whatever. So we're gonna go in the same order that we started in. Mr. Minson, tell us your area, District 1, a little briefly what that encompasses. You kind of got a little bit of a wonky district. Oh, you're muted.
So
And yeah,
I'm District 1, and I go from just above part of Highlands down through McNair, and it weaves down in through Ginger Creek and Crestmont and Quail Hollow, little bit of country club, over back behind Bay Villa, over behind Lee High School. So it's sort of a very interesting meandering type of district. To get a hold of me, I've set up an email that you can email me. It's jeffrey.l.minson@gmail.com. And be glad to hear from you. There is a website that's coming up, a Facebook com that I've got up and running that you can do, and I put some information out on that. I guess my big thing for everyone is it's nice to be able to interact as a community. It's very important to me. I think that's where we work through problems together. And that's unity, to me, needs to be our big thing to help our kids. We as adults need to show the way.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Laredo. So where do they find you? How do they talk to you? Where are you located?
I think everybody has my phone number out there, actually.
I
get a lot of
don't
phone
know
calls.
if I do. No, I'm kidding.
It's on my cards. It's on my push cards.
Actually, I think
My
I do.
email, I have laredoforschoolboard@gmail.com. I have a Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, name it, I have it. Under my name is AGUSTIN LOREDO. I tell people they misspelled it on the map. You know, if people want to find me, that it's not really hard to find me. I get a lot of phone calls, and honestly, you know, my district, you know, is where I was born and raised, Old Baytown. I'm down here, and it loops around a little bit towards, grabs the back of Oakwood Addition, just the corner of it, grabs Pelly, goes up east side all the way up to Memorial Park, the east part of Memorial Park on the other side of Park. And you know, I'm just really excited to thank you once again, Kim, for hosting us. Thank you for everybody watching. You know, honestly, I just want to tell people, do your research, do your research on what you want to do. My students sometimes tell me, well, what about you? I said, you can Google me, Google my name and add Baytown on there and I come up. You do your research when it comes to who you want to look for as a candidate to best represent you. As simple as maybe a Google search, or ask the community what we're about. And that's how I think people should make decisions. Thank you so much.
You bet. All right, Mr. Renteria. So
I'm in the same district he just mentioned, Baytown, Pelly, up West Main to Morrell, all that area. I have a proven track record of service. I believe that when you're in the service of your fellow beings, you're in the service of the man upstairs. So I believe in service. I served in the military. I served on council. I've done all kinds of things. I have a proven track record. I know I'm the best candidate for District 2. So I just say, vote Renteria if you want sincerity and honesty and service. I got you.
all right. And Mr. Poppy.
All right. District 5. I got a little bit north of I-10, Springfield, East Point, Preston Place, Meadow Lake. Go back over down Maine, get Hunters Creek, go down that area. That's District 5. Ben Poppy, District 5. You can look it up, Facebook. I got a webpage. It's an honor to serve. I appreciated the last 4 years. I've learned a lot. I feel like I still have value to give, and looking forward for another 4 years. But that's it.
All right, good deal, y'all. So that's it. I am going to end the live feed. Maybe if I know how to do that. I think I do. Hold on right here. Okay. So stop live stream. Here we go. All right. And I'm going to stop recording too. Do you want to stop live?